Welcome, guys. Welcome to the Flats. We are live. Thanks for coming in, joining us today. It's been a while coming and good to get you both in. First of all, I've got to thank our sponsor, Capital Brewing, for supporting the show and supporting all of what we do on the channel. So thank you very much. Cheers to you guys. And guys, it's been an interesting few months. Things are starting to open up again. Dance floors are returning. How's it been for you guys the last few weekends?
Well, maybe I'll start it from a DJ perspective and you can talk from a business perspective. How's that work?
Good, sounds
By
good.
the way, we probably should say, first of all, congratulations on the Academy doco. It's amazing.
Thank you for being a part of it, man.
No, it was a pleasure. You came and saw me perhaps, like a year and a half ago to do that interview.
Yeah.
And even then I was excited to see what would come out of it. And it's beyond my expectations, so congratulations on it.
Thank you, man. It's been a lot of fun putting together.
Yeah, and while we're patting people on the back, I should probably also say Jared's more than a resident of Academy. He was running the place for quite some time.
Very
He was
true.
technically my boss for a long time, so I had to behave. But getting to your question, yeah, it's great. Look, from a DJ perspective, and I'm sure I speak for all the DJs out there, whether they're the club DJs or whether they're lounge or and bar DJs, it's been so great to have Canberra open back up again. And the nicer thing too is not only have the venues kind of jumped on of having entertainment back on very quickly, but also the support of the patrons has been fantastic. The vibe was just instant, and people are still being very respectful of the rules that needed to be in place and still partly are. But overall, it's just been fantastic. So I'm just glad that it's really picked up and everyone's pretty excited. How are you seeing it from your side?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar. Like it's like boomed immediately. Like soon as restrictions ease, like, yeah. I mean, the first week where it was very still tight restrictions, people were sort of a bit unsure. But then as soon as the 2 square meter rule came in, it just went crazy. Like customers trying to book, I'm sure people will be lining up to get into clubs, like especially nightclubs. Like that's crazy that they haven't been able to go out in that long. I just couldn't even imagine being in that situation. Like from a DJ not being able to play for that, for months, and it's very, very interesting times. But hopefully it's over.
There's a lot of pent up energy, right?
Yeah.
That's coming out.
You'd be lining up tunes for months, like you ready to go.
It's very true.
Because the last time I think I saw you, Ashley, we were filming at the Fiction during the last lockdown as it was just opening up, and you were playing sit-down shows to crowds in
Did you play sit-down shows?
in Fiction.
Wow.
So it's come a long way. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. But
I think they booked me because I was the only DJ that would be guaranteed not to make anyone dance.
Yeah.
No, that's right. That was exactly. We went down there, and it was the first. I think I played 3 or 4 sets. That was the very first weekend they opened back up again, and the restrictions were such that people could only sit and enjoy drinks, and it was such a weird but awesome experience having a dance floor full of tables with people sitting around them with drinks, and you can just see their legs and everything else wanting, and I was keeping the tempo and the songs that I was playing at such a level to not overdo it. So it wasn't just torture. I was just teasing people, but that was that. And you were there right till the very end.
yeah,
So
it was
fun.
really interesting to see. And was great because they were actually doing shifts. Like there was 2-hour blocks, and then they'd clear the entire club out, and then the next DJ and next group would come in.
Yeah.
But I think everyone's happy that that's over now, and we're back to the dance floors.
Yeah. I could imagine too that you'd know probably a lot more than I would about this, but there probably have been so many bookings that got cancelled of touring DJs and stuff. So now I'm presuming there's this huge choice for clubs to actually pick and choose from different acts that are touring, right?
I think so. Like, I haven't been in that situation before, so I don't know. But I imagine like artists would be so keen to, play gigs again. So I'd feel like an open market to try and, get as much as you can, obviously within Australia at the moment and then eventually internationally. But, you think not only are DJs super keen to play and play any show they can because they haven't been able to play in so long, but, obviously clubs trying to get as many DJs as they can and the best that they possibly can at any time. So it's good to see. Like, sometimes when I was there, especially, like getting some of the best DJs was hard because they were booked out, for months in advance. So hopefully that means they've got more options. So, yeah.
Are you glad you're out of the nightclub game now before COVID came?
Oh, I mean, I was still in hospitality, so it's not much better. But,
yeah. You miss it?
Like parts of it. I got to a point where I just couldn't keep up anymore. I was never a late night person anyway. And just DJing in nightclubs was just getting to a point where I just didn't love it anymore. And it became a chore and became hard. Getting up 1 o'clock in the morning to go into the club, like I just got to a point, I didn't love it anymore. So, parts of it though I do really miss, but the other parts I don't. Yeah.
And also, I guess, getting out of the festivals too, because that was a bit of a nightmare through this period too, by the sound of it.
Yeah.
And because you had a bit to do with the Foreshore festivals and Kicks Entertainment as that was coming up. How was that experience?
As in, getting out of it, or?
Well, let's start at the start. But when you were doing it and it was going off, and we touched on it in the doco that it was came at a time when festivals were ramping up, and everyone was loving them, and that was the biggest one in Canberra by far. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, at the time it was awesome. It was so much fun being part of something that you really enjoy. But like as the years went past, and as you get older, you start seeing from a different perspective. Like when you're in the business side of it, or in the running of the actual festival, you start to realize that actually festivals aren't as much fun as you think they might be. And you just see the kind of the worst parts of it as well. And there's also obviously there's some really great highlights, but there's lowlights that a lot of people don't realize. And when you see a highlight clip of a festival, it all looks magic. It looks amazing. Everyone's dancing, smiling, having fun, but you don't see some of the other parts of it, and how much work goes in. Long days. But I don't regret it at all. It was awesome at the time. But it was very similar to nightclubs. You just get to a point where I guess I lost the love and energy for it. And when I was doing it, it didn't feel like a job. It just felt like something that I really enjoyed, and I would do it almost for free, like if I could. But it got to a point where I felt like, I got to go. I got to do this. I got to do another 18-hour day, to do this. And you just start, losing that love for it, and it becomes a real chore. And same with DJing. And I just realized I don't want to do it if it's a chore, because I only ever started doing it because I loved it. And, once you get to that point, I just decided, no, I should just give it up and do something different.
Yeah.
But I still do enjoy it, and I still like to go to a gig here and there, but I'm never on the dance floor anymore.
I guess it's one of those things too that music and getting into DJing is very much a passion thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing that fuels your DJ career. And the moment you lose the passion, it then just becomes a job. And DJing as a job isn't exactly all that great. It's bad hours, probably not exactly great pay, conditions are a bit questionable, etc., etc. So I think in that respect, unless you have passion sitting behind it, you do eventually kind of say, you know what, I'm going to exit out of it. But at least not all DJing is DJing. There is, like you said, there's the nightclub DJs, and you're very right. You start doing 2 to 4 a.m. sets, and at first that's a good idea. Then after a couple of years, you're thinking, I don't think I can do this anymore. But that doesn't mean that you can't move into other gigs, and I still DJ every weekend, but that's more on the loungy tip because I like that, and I can sustain that, and that works well. And it's also a movement of people. You want to sometimes give up your spot for someone that really wants to be there, and if you just hold on too long, it just seems a bit selfish. Yeah. And I'm sure you had that thinking too. I remember calling you up when I was thinking of finishing at Academy and talking you through it. Yeah. And you said, I know it's really hard, but you're doing the right thing. Yeah. You're almost helping me make the decision in many ways. So
I'm just impressed that you're still able to keep playing. I think your passion for the music side of things continues, where I think for me it sort of fizzled out a little bit, maybe because I was more involved in the business side of it. So where I wasn't just a DJ, I think maybe that passion would have stayed a bit longer. But because I was in the business side of it, I think it started to fizzle out eventually. And realized I thought maybe my future is not just DJing. Like I thought, I probably enjoy this side a bit more. But yeah, I kind of, every now and then I'm like, get on this like, oh, I love this tune. Oh, I found this. You
get that little
tunes. I'm
spark.
like, oh, maybe I could play a set again. Like, and then I realized, no, it's too much work.
Yeah, but you know, the other side of it too is you're right. The passion is there for me, and that's the driver. It's also very much a professional hobby, not a job.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is because I produce my own music. There's a world around it attached to it that is really important to me. Actually, I'll tell you something funny about festivals. I've actually never said this before, but when we used to do like Foreshore and the warehouse ones as well, I'd go to them, do my set, hang around to say hello to all the people I knew, other DJs, the promoters, friends, and I would always go home early, and people would find that really weird and say, how come you're not hanging around? Like,
You're so sensible.
I don't know, there is something about big crowds that I don't feel that comfortable in. So I'm absolutely fine being on stage. This is going to sound so strange. On stage with the audience being in front. And that could be thousands of people, i.e. Foreshore. No problem, right? Yeah. But if you put me in that crowd, I start feeling slightly uneasy about the mass of people. And I'm a short guy. I can easily get trampled. It's I mean, I'm joking about that. But I am a short guy. But I stand my own. But the truth is, I knew where my place was, and being a punter for a very long time at a festival has never been my thing. So I loved seeing friends, talking about music, being there for a highlight, and then exiting out. Which strange thing.
Do you think the way that you've sort of kept that passion is by doing all the other things you've been working on, like a podcast yourself, which touches on music, but is a much broader topic as well, and the writing you do for her Canberra and stuff, has that kept you kind of passionate in that sense too? Yeah.
So if you asked me that question quite a few years ago, I would have said they're all different things, you know. But what's interesting is if I look at the things that I do, they all are in the same ball of essentially creative communications is what I would call it. It sounds wanky. Yeah. But music is a form, and DJing is a form of communicating essentially music to somebody else for a particular purpose, either enjoyment or dancing or what have you, or creating a mood. The writing's no different. You're telling a story, but it's just for a different type, you know, and words come to life and then they bring meaning and all the rest of it. The podcast, same thing. Jared was a guest as well, and even though I know Jared really well, in that conversation we kind of delved into his thinking about business, which I thought was really, really interesting. And, you know, you learn more about that. There's a story behind that, which enriches you. So it all makes sense. And yes, I guess all of that kind of relates to each other. And even though writing for her Canberra for the home stories and DJing would seem slightly different things, that are about communicating with human beings and having some kind of engagement with them. So, yeah.
And it keeps it interesting. Like, you're not doing the same thing every night. And you know, you finding other ways to kind of do it. So it's really cool. And the podcast is awesome. If you're watching and you haven't listened, go check it out.
Thanks
Behind
for
the Bio, it's awesome. Probably one of the best podcasts in Canberra, I reckon.
I haven't paid him.
No, I'm serious.
How many beers have you had?
What's that experience been like? What have you learned from those? You've been talking to some pretty amazing people there. So how's that experience been?
Well, there's a couple of, and a very generic level, I'll probably say that it's amazing that a small place like Canberra, tight-knit place, has no shortage of really great talent and really interesting
Some that
people.
comes up all the time, like how much Canberra's got going for it.
It really does. So that's first thing. I'm not limited ever in terms of who I'd like to reach out to. If I'd like to think of business people, creatives, scientists, what have you, they're by the buckets here. So that's that. Two is I've learned that people are actually by far more receptive and care more than I thought they would about listening to other people's stories. It's a big ask to have somebody listen to a podcast for an hour about somebody's life journey in terms of their professional kind of thing. But, you know, the listeners love it. That's going really well. So it means that people care. In other words, we are actually engaged with each other, which is kind of cool because it means Canberra's got that, 1 degree of separation and we actually know and care for each other. So that's that. And on a personal level, I think the insight has been that we're all human beings, and no matter how successful somebody seems on the outside, we've all got ups and downs, and we make mistakes, and we learn from them. And what's really great is that if we really tune into that, we can be wiser and make wiser decisions in the future based on the things that other people have done. So I find that fun. It's a great experience.
Yeah, awesome. And I want to talk about the doco. I haven't spoken to you about it yet. Your reaction, just briefly on a few messages. What was it like seeing some of that old footage again from the early days?
Yeah.
Probably 04, 05 even, when that came out.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the exceptionally questionable haircuts and weird choices in T-shirts and things. But hey,
everyone was in the same boat
I was
there.
going to say, we're all keeping up with fashion. That's what we should be doing, right? I mean, clearly, Jared and I got the memo today about sweat tops and blues. So, but what was interesting about it? If I've watched a lot of documentaries on music in the past, things from the 70s and stuff from the 80s, and also things from the rave culture. And when I look at that, it always seems very dated. I'm like, man, it seems ancient. What really hit me about the doco is that looking back to that time, which is not that long ago, it actually seems like quite a long time ago.
I know. I felt the same way.
I'm like, wow, are we already that retro, and how quickly that's happened? You
look so young there.
No, he's got a special effect.
He looks young there. Yeah.
It's got a special effect on there.
But he hasn't aged as well at the same time.
You literally haven't changed. Just the hair.
Considering the amount of nights I've spent in the academy, I would have thought I would have been aging much quicker.
Yeah, but that's the funny thing about that is the time sort of thing was that when I was telling people I'm making a doco on that, people were like, oh, didn't that only close like a couple of years ago? Like, why would you do something so soon? But you had to do it now, otherwise it would all get lost because those tapes would go. So in that sense, it's cool to kind of do something a bit more recent than, the look back on the 70s that you normally see. But it was really fun to go through this sort of stuff and learn a bit about the early days of Canberra.
Yeah, indeed. I think it would have been, it was interesting too, because if I think of your career, Jared, that was kind of like the beginning for you. Tell me if I'm wrong, but even from what we discussed, that was your first kind of resident major gigs that you were doing, but also your beginning of working with Kicks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, that was like the launching period for you. So probably you look back on it and say, wow, I remember those days, and look where you've got to now.
Yeah. I still remember the first gig played at Academy. I remember even like the days before then, like when I'd just as a punter would go there and be like, like Milk Bar Nick was playing in the Candy Bar, and Ash downstairs, or Chris Fraser, or I still remember those days too. Like, and then it sort of changed and kind of went. I don't know. I think that was that period where it sort of dropped down again, and then I started DJing. First gig I ever played there was a Thursday night foam party, and it was wild. There was so many people there, and it was awesome. And then I think the second gig I played was like a Friday night. That was like an opener to it. I'm pretty sure it was TV Rock at the time, and it was one of the first Fridays they'd opened after they'd been closed down for a bit, and it was like there was like 2 people in the club. So I went from playing like a full club of rowdy foam party patrons to 2 people. Like the next gig, I'm like, oh, maybe this club isn't what I thought it was. But then got a few more gigs after that, and then realised that like, okay, now Fridays are just like they're just starting out. They're working on it, and just love playing whatever night it was. Really, I didn't care. I just loved playing. So yeah, no, it definitely was the sort of start of the career, I guess, in DJing, and then led to other things eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that was the interesting thing about the one of the themes of it that I came across was that how it did if not so much just being a DJ, but it shaped people's futures in different ways, and it shaped what has happened in Canberra to this day. So things like your restaurants wouldn't be there without Academy in some part, and that path all lined up perfectly. Did you feel that kind of, Ash said it in the doco, that it did influence his future by playing as a resident at Academy?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, to a degree. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if I put myself in those same shoes and I was just a DJ and never end up like involved in the business side of it.
Yeah, but even that.
Yeah,
too,
what I would have ended up, I don't know,
Yeah.
like, you know, who knows where I would have gone. But yeah, the fact that I got involved in the business side through Kix first of all, because Kix and Tame was doing all the marketing and booking all the acts for Academy at the time. Getting through that and then eventually running academies, all marketing and bookings and everything. Yeah, like I just learned so much about the business side of hospitality, really. It wasn't just nightclubs. It wasn't just Academy itself. Like I learned so much that could be applied to any business. It wasn't just necessarily hospitality as well. And I think a lot of the other people that were, you know, Chris Fraser and Lawrence and yourself, like, you know, even though you weren't really involved in the business side of it, you would have been involved with a lot of guys that were. So you like learned so much and has progressed your career as well. And, you know, guys like I worked, you know, directly with Frank, who's in the documentary, and Paul Cubbin and Lawrence and Ryan, and, you know, a whole bunch of guys that were really, who are all really successful, you know. So like, yeah, I was able to learn so much from them and sort of pick and choose, like, you know, the things that they did really well, or things that maybe some of them didn't do that well, and you know, try and take those skills and make them my own, and eventually do my own business. So, but yeah, I guess that platform gave me the opportunities to see what could be done, really, like, and not just the club, but the festivals too, because the festivals were on a whole nother level. You know, trying to get 25,000 people at one spot in one time is huge logistics and marketing, and, you know, there's so much involved in it. And seeing that firsthand gave me an idea, and seeing like, okay, well, this is what they did to make that happen. Or like, what could I do to do something even on a much smaller scale, or and learn different skills from those different people. And yeah, I guess that's how I end up here.
Yeah. Then we got Lazy Sue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah. I mean, like, obviously took a few years, but then got there, and Lazy Sue came from, I guess, nightclubs in a way, because I wanted to create that. Well, I obviously love the experience that nightclubs gives you. You know, you come in, music's going, you know, people are having a great time. There's so many elements to it to create a really good environment in a nightclub, and I wanted to create that environment in a restaurant, you know, without sort of maybe the full-onness of a nightclub. But I wanted people to walk in the restaurant and go, whoa, this is fun. You're like, I want to have a couple of drinks. I want to have a good time with my friends. This is going to be a night to remember. And I felt like a lot of restaurants don't really do that. You know, you just go there and eat and then go home, maybe have a good conversation or whatever. But like, I really wanted to create an experience and a night out that people felt like they were getting out of Canberra for a night. So that, yeah, I guess I wouldn't have been able to do that at Lazy Sue without the nightclub experience. Like, I wouldn't have known the ingredients involved to create that experience. You know, it's like great music, great lighting, obviously good food, but the drinks and like the whole experience comes together, and it wouldn't have been as good or even possible if I didn't have the experience of the nightclubs.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think that's one of the parts of the success and longevity of Lazy Sue? Because in Canberra, it's kind of notorious that the turnover of places are really fast, and there's always something new. We talked tonight about some places are already reinventing themselves. Do you think what do you think that is in Canberra with that sort of hospo industry?
Oh, I mean, it's pretty natural progression anywhere. It's not just, I wouldn't say it's just Canberra. Like, you come up with a really interesting idea, or you're like really passionate about it, and then over time that passion wears out, and either you haven't got the right things in place to ensure that success lasts, or maybe that idea you had, maybe it was just cool at the time and doesn't actually have any legs to it. So like with Lazy Sue, it's been 5 years now. And for us, it was like for me, really wanted to create a cool brand, a cool experience. And that brand has outlasted, I think, and continued to grow over time. So I feel like it's set up for success no matter how long we end up going for. And we continue to make sure the experience is great at every point, as good as we possibly can. And I think if you're not onto those things, everything just starts wearing out over time. Customers realize those things. Like, you might not notice, or you might think, oh, the customers won't notice a little mark on the floor there, but they do. And like little things over time, and if it gets worse and deteriorates, then eventually people are like, oh, let's go somewhere else. Let's go somewhere new. And that's why that sort of happens. But I think if you're on top of those things and you ensure the experience, and you ensure the the things that you're doing, you're constantly being innovative. You're not just sitting there and going, oh, whatever I created is going to work forever. There's no reason why you can't keep going.
Yeah, definitely. And you also innovated a little bit during the lockdown, which kept you going. Like a lot of businesses in Canberra, they had to adapt. How was that process this last lockdown for you guys?
Yeah, it's fun for like a week, and then then it wears out pretty quickly. But no, like we just I guess we're very proactive, and like we can't just sit there and do nothing. We've got to reach as many people as we can, because we can only serve so many people within a certain area via takeaway, for example. So like, okay, well, we know that there's all these people out in Tuggeranong or Belconnen or Gungahlin or Western Creek, wherever, Queanbeyan, like they can't necessarily drive to Lazy Sue and get dinner. So let's go to them. Like, let's work out how can we do this. And we just logistically worked it out. So we do special nights and go, send as many orders we could to that one area, and just send all our drivers as fast as we possibly could, and kept the food warm. And try to basically maximize that way. And I guess that was our idea of trying to get to as many people as we possibly could, without sort of wearing out the inner north as much as, I felt like that only would last a week or two. You do okay out of it, but by expanding our reach, we did really well. So comparatively, it was fun for a while, but then I'm pretty glad it's over at the same time.
Hey Jared, the thing you talked about a moment ago about there being just a natural progression of restaurants having to change and evolve, and if they don't, then eventually the owners might do something completely different. Do you think Canberrans are slightly spoiled for choice, and therefore we tend to gravitate to things that are new and shiny, and then we kind of go, well, I've already had that, now I want something else? A little bit like children with toys, right? And I have heard this, not from you, from other business owners, and it kind of sounds very negative too, but Canberra audiences are fickle, this is what I hear. But I don't think that's either particularly true, and in fact I think they're probably talking about specific people that could be attributable to any place, not just Canberra. But do you think it's part of not so much the restaurant but also the audiences, that no matter how good something is, we sometimes just want change for the sake of change, in the words new attached to something, and a new place to go, just because it feels good. Once again, it adds to the extra experience of having a new experience,
Oh yeah, definitely. Like everything's, when something's new comes out, like doesn't matter. It's not just restaurants. Like
people swarm to
new
it.
iPhone comes out, everyone goes, oh, but like I think new only sticks if it actually is better. If it's just a cool idea at the time, but people go there and go, oh, actually I kind of prefer the other place I went last time. Like, people will draw to a new place immediately, but it doesn't necessarily last. So I think if you continue doing what you're doing, you know what you do is good, and you know customers enjoy it, then either stick with it or maybe you need to innovate slightly to catch up. You know, you only really need to innovate if you're falling behind in a way. If you're already doing everything well and people are enjoying it, then I think stick with it, even if there is a new place down the road. Because I think eventually customers, if they do go there down the road, then they'll come back. You know, so
I appreciate you have a lot of loyalty though, right? If you looked at your customers, just the whole entire 100%,
yeah.
how many of them would be, just roughly in percentage, like loyal customers that just repeat over and over again?
As a percentage,
like roughly, just.
I'd say 25%.
Okay.
Because I think Lazy Sue draws a moving crowd too. You know, because it's a place to go out. Like I'd say, it's a hard question to answer because I think we get a lot of, especially before lockdown, we would get a lot of tourists coming, being on Lonsdale Street. You know, it's considered a place to go when you're in Canberra. So you get people coming down and just popping in and booking a table. And we get a lot of Sydney-siders, a lot of people from, you know, Victoria, a lot of people, you know, from Queensland, whoever's in town. But, I noticed our loyalty really shine through lockdown. You know, by doing everything online, we were able to see, like, okay, who's ordering, how many orders are they doing. So you're able to track it a bit better than when people just come in with their friends. And because, you know, not necessarily just because I might go 5 times in a week, but I necessarily didn't book the table 5 times in that week. You know, who knows? So, yeah, during lockdown, it was really interesting to see. And the loyalty really sort of shined. And it really kind of, the fact that we were able to pivot so quickly was, I think, because we had a really good brand and, yeah, strong marketing that we were able to get out straight, like almost immediately. And it was like, we were kind of, when lockdown first got announced, we're like, do we close down completely for a few days and just see what happens? Or do we just switch to takeaway next day and just run with it? And we were kind of debating it for a bit. And I was like, no, we have to go to takeaway immediately. Otherwise, you know, we kind of lose the traction. We need to be on it immediately. And so people still think, oh, we're available. And so we did that. And I think it worked in our favor in the end. Yeah. I think places that closed down for, say, 2 or 3 weeks and then try to reopen found it much harder to gain that traction back.
You lost the momentum.
Yeah.
Would you agree, if I compare this to Academy, though, so roughly 25%, right? So a quarter of your people are kind of loyalty.
Yeah, maybe high, yeah.
Let's park it at that. What's interesting is if you look at Academy, remember how we used to talk about the 1-year rule? And so you used to kind of capture people at the beginning of the year. And I would hazard a guess it's probably the exact opposite. About 75% of their audience would just be return Academy loyals who'd just be there practically every second weekend or so. And you'd see them for a year until their social kind of habits change and they start going, you know what, maybe I won't do nightclubs anymore, and they'll start going to bars and stuff, right? They just progress out of it. And then we try to capture a new market, and then you've got them for a whole year. So it's kind of funny that you're talking about that loyalty in that way. But for nightclubs, it was, at least at Academy, was almost the flip. It'd be a lot of people, similar faces every weekend.
I definitely think like 10, 15 years ago, there was that more so in Canberra because there wasn't a whole lot of places to go. Now there's like so much choice, like expecting people to come to you almost every weekend. And maybe nightclubs are still barely similar because there's not a whole lot of nightclubs out there. But like for a restaurant, for example, like there's so many restaurants in Canberra. Like expecting our customers to come to our restaurant every single week is like pretty unrealistic. And maybe some do, but like I don't think there's that many that do. And
maybe your burgers at Baby Sue might be a different story.
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, no, like it is interesting, but it's also that you only have, every business has its demographic, and that demographic eventually moves on. Like Lazy Sue's primary demographic is 25 to 35 year olds, really. So they may come for a few years, and then they, you know, maybe they start having kids, or they move out to the suburbs.
I'm out.
Well, like, you know, and then they might not come to us anymore, or they come once a year rather than every couple of weeks, you know. So, yeah, that changes same as nightclubs. Like you'd see people for a year or two, and then next minute they've moved on because they don't want to go nightclubs anymore, and then you get the next age group coming
early
through.
20s demographic at most.
Yeah.
Because you used to be quite the loyal punter.
Yeah.
So at the high ends of at the best days of when you used to go to academy, like the highlight during that period, would you be there once a week, every 2 weeks?
Yeah, once a week. Like, because academy opened the year I turned 18, or the year before I turned 18. So it was like the hype was all there at that time, and I'd go there pretty regularly.
And wouldn't you also recognise the vast majority on the people on the dance floor?
Yeah. What you're saying is definitely right. I reckon it was like Jim said it in the doco. It was like a community of people would all go there and see the same people every week, and that was part of it. That was before like Facebook and all these other networking. That was where the networking was done.
That's where you talked about music.
And that's where you talked about music, where you learned about it. It was all
and dance music was kind of this is crazy new, like, well, not crazy, but like it was very different back then to what it is now. It's very it's obviously very mainstream now, but back then it was like, you're into house music. Oh, okay, that's really cool. We can have a conversation about that. But now it's like, oh, you're into house music. Like, what even is that like?
We were the OG.
Yeah. What was
like
it?
That I was a little bit after that. I was a couple of years after that. So I kind of wish I was, I think when I first started DJing Academy, there was still like the Facebook groups, and there's still like, what was that? It was like a forum. MySpace. Like there's like Academy Canberra forums that like people all talked about. Even I remember the first couple of gigs I played, there'd be people talking on the forum about who played that weekend and what they thought of their sets.
Really?
Like you just wouldn't have that anymore.
Nah.
And people like, you just wouldn't have that same community, people just going out, like appreciating the music as much as they did back then, I think. Like,
or if you do, I would argue that it's within much more niche genres.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
in terms of mainstream house and
I mean, like
stuff,
to the level of Academy, you might have 100 people that are interested in that niche, genre, but you're not going to fill Academy at 600 people, like,
And kind of the resident thing, I don't know if you think that's kind of changed, but back when you guys were residents, it was like everyone knew you guys. It was like your names and faces were up on posters all around the city.
Yeah.
That still kind of happens, but it doesn't seem to be that sort of level where everyone knew about you. Was that something you noticed at the time, like that sort of celebrity almost?
I shouldn't say it was celebrity, but actually I just
within the community it was.
So, but Jared and I didn't have agents. I mean, you didn't have a booking agent. I didn't. Pretty sure Chris didn't. Rob didn't. So I think if I go through, Pred didn't. Yeah, they didn't. So essentially, what was great about that, it was you're very much a self-made DJ that gets recognized for the music and the sets and how you make people feel. So therefore, they know you from that. It's not like there's an agent pushing an agenda through social podcasts, newspapers, articles. In fact, you had to kind of do your own legwork if you wanted to get that out there. It most certainly felt really good. But what felt great about it was the random walk-ups at, Canberra Centre on a Saturday afternoon. I was buying something at David Jones, and somebody walks up and says, I was there last night and it was awesome. I love how you dropped that track. And I'm thinking, people pay attention enough to remember the night and then spot me and say hello. And that part of it, or that experience that you connected with people, even though you didn't meet them on the night, I thought was amazing. And that part of it gave me a huge head, and I've been not fitting into small rooms.
Not at all. Not at all. What about you through lockdown? Ashley continued. Did you kind of turn to that music production side of what you do a bit during lockdown, and sort of making some new tunes in the home studio?
Yes, indeed. But what the funny thing about that is, it's not like lockdown happens and then a whole bunch of time just becomes available and you're thinking, great, I'll smash out more music. That's always the plan. But the reality is other things get in the way. So there's other projects that come up, people brainstorm ideas. I've got clients that want some creative solutions. And in fact, the time that I thought I had spare gets filled up with other things, and it's not Netflix either. So actually, I would probably argue that the rate of production has been maybe just 15%, 25% quicker than normal. But yeah, I haven't been prolific in kind of getting tunes out.
Yeah.
Just because
Here's
I haven't
one
had
here.
the time.
You've had a couple out during this time.
It's true.
It's a new one, is it?
That is. Actually, that's just come out. Yeah. I think it'll be up on Spotify pretty soon too. It's very Roy Scott, don't you think? Just wait till this. Hands in the air.
Great,
Have
great.
you got a laser in here or something? Okay, listen to this bit.
You say, why don't we stay? But all I want is to sail away and float
Tune.
above this life we live. Forget
Good.
the noise.
King George is local too.
You say, why don't we stay? But all I want
So how do you juggle your all your pseudonyms? The most named man in Canberra or something.
Oh, really? Hang on. There's my real name, Ashley Feraude. There is.
How do you decide which name to tell people when people are like, oh,
Depends what they're talking to me about.
oh, okay, so it depends.
Yeah. So there's Ashley Feraude, all the kind of creative projects and DJing stuff. Magnifique is the original productions. And then there's a sub thing that I do, which is called Mateus, but that's really small. So there's only those. It's not like that many. I'm not like heaps of DJs who've got like 20 different names, you know. So yeah, it's not that bad.
No, it's good.
It's just one of them is very difficult to pronounce, so
Yeah.
that's why.
So I wonder if you're just like, oh, it's too hard. My last name's Feraude. Like,
Well, that's how that was born, because I remember the very first gig I got, which was actually at Heaven, a nightclub that used to exist in Civic a long time ago, and they needed a name for the poster that I was doing for a Thursday or Friday night, and I kind of thought I can't put Majeski on there. Like people won't be able to read that. It's just so I'm thinking, okay, let me think of a name, and I always really liked this French designer called Louis Feraude, the clothing designer, and really liked the way his name looked in terms of the spelling of it, and it's a weird aesthetic thing, right? And I went, great, I'll just pop an E at the end of it. I've got a slight French heritage, so I'm thinking, great, it's not too fake. Still sounds European. I'm going with it, and it's stuck.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's how that was.
Yeah.
And you know, for years, people completely knew me by the name. Actually, I think there's a lot of people that still think that's actually my real name.
Why? For years, I thought that was your name.
I should just change it, and that's
Yeah.
it. But then my father would get upset. I have no son.
We'll get one project with the original name one day from you. Yeah.
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 And what else is coming up, guys? What can we expect first from you, Ash, in the next few months? As more dance floors open, more people get out and about. What can we expect?
Sure. I mean, look, if I don't know about dance floors, because a lot of the places I play these days is more sitting around with an expensive cocktail and looking fancy. So probably more for Jared's types these days. But look, you can definitely see me in heaps of different lounges and bars and places in Canberra. I'll be DJing on weekends for sure. Some events are kicking back off again. So ACT government's putting a whole bunch of things up through Events ACT. So I'll be doing those. There's a couple of creative things that are popping up as well that I'll be part of. Lots of more music to get out there.
So we can expect some more.
Yeah. In fact, there's at least another 2 before the end of the year and quite a few after that. It just kind of worked out that way. Again, that 25% extra must have really paid off. So that part of it, and that's it. I'll keep on going with the home stories. The podcast keeps going as well. In fact, I really should get you on it. That'd be fun. That'd be a fun chat.
Yeah,
Especially since you gave me that free plug a moment ago. No, I owe you. But yeah, so aside from that, that's probably enough. And apart from that, just normal work at the University of Canberra is keeping me really busy as well. It's kind of exciting to get everything back to normality on the campus there and get the community of students back in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and international students as well from next year. So that's kind of pretty exciting. It's really changes a place when you've got students at a university.
Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting. So yeah, that's kind of probably enough for the time being, right?
That's plenty to do. How about
Sounds
you,
good.
Jared?
Oh, just
We
get to the
getting
end of the year.
a Baby Sue chain spreading across the country anytime soon?
Not yet. I mean, well, I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, I just want to really get through the end of the year and then reset for next year. And
Yeah.
there's definitely, I've got itchy feet, so there's definitely going to be new business at some point. But what that is, and whether it's lazy something or something Sue related, or whether it's something completely different. We've got lots of ideas and concepts. It's actually just going and doing them. So it's we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's
Just settle in, I
nothing's-
guess, after a rough
Yeah.
couple of years.
I've just been waiting out through COVID, and then I think look at next year and really look at something different, something cool.
Cool.
Yeah,
So we can expect something probably next year.
yeah. I think something definitely next year. It's just what that is. Don't
Awesome.
know. I don't even know.
The same
myself, so-
team behind it.
Don't know. Well, we'll see. I
Yeah.
mean, it's still, there's nothing confirmed or nothing in the works yet.
Oh,
so
we can't
we'll
get
just-
the exclusive here.
Unfortunately, I got nothing to tell you other than
People watching can write in their ideas,
yeah, definitely send them through.
what they want to see in Canberra.
But yeah, no, we got a few ideas that we've always sort of wanted to do, and things that I've really wanted to do. So yeah, we'll just see what happens.
So good. Well, thank you guys for coming in. That's it's been awesome to chat and catch up. And
Hang on. How about yourself? What have you got on the cards?
with the Academy doco out, don't have much planned coming up. We got a new video coming out this weekend, actually. I do. The Blank Walls of Braddon are coming down. So there's a new mural. People probably would have seen it on Lonsdale Street.
It's on the new build. that new
Yeah,
building.
on the new building on the corner. So we talked to the painters and the artists behind that project. So there'll be something coming out at the end of the week on that.
Is that the work that Yanni?
Stavros.
Oh, they're a different one.
Stavro
Yeah.
is the owner, the developer there, part of a festival that's coming to town soon, the Surface Fest. So we did a little thing on that, and we'll have more podcasts, a few more before the end of the year, a few more of these. But yeah, that's about it. I have to find a new main project to do. So if anyone's got any ideas, we'll be doing another doco on something.
The Lazy Sue story.
Yeah, the Lazy Sue story.
What
mate.
really happens in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. But yeah, no, plenty going on. Thank you, Ash.
Do the story of Ashley Feraude.
Yeah, the biopic.
Where did the name come from? And
Yeah. How does this say so young?
all the clubs he's played at.
Can you still hear?
Why hasn't he aged?
What's he drinking?
Yeah.
Is it blood? A stupid thing about me being a vampire. That would be a good one to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. So
There you go.
Done. All right. Stay tuned for the next film festival. We'll be there. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us in the flats. Thank you again to our sponsors, Capital, for helping out. And we'll be back soon and catch you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.